Hey, beautiful soul, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. And if you're returning, welcome back. Please like, subscribe, and share what resonates in the comments. To everyone supporting through memberships and super thanks, thank you. Truly. Today's card is the Eight of Swords reversed. Remember, this is psychological symbolism, not a fixed prediction. Take what speaks to your experience and leave the rest. Now, look at this image. The cat is upside down, surrounded by sharp shapes, but the whole scene feels less like defeat and more like a trap losing its power. That matters, because you may still be seeing yourself through an old story. A story that says you are hidden, overlooked, difficult to understand, or somehow outside the rooms where important decisions are made. But symbolically, this card suggests that the restriction is beginning to collapse. And here is the strange part. While you may believe nobody is paying attention, your name has already escaped the box you placed it in. Someone has been talking about you. Not casually, repeatedly. They may have shown a photograph, mentioned your work, described your personality, or told a story about an encounter that affected them more than they expected. And now people who have never met you already have an impression of you. Wait. This person is not speaking about you the way they speak about everyone else. Their tone changes. They become more animated, more careful, almost protective. That is what made the circle curious. These may be people used to status, influence, money, attention, or access. They are accustomed to being impressed on purpose. But what fascinates them about you is that you do not seem to be performing for anyone. The reversed swords reflect a mind slowly releasing fear, but they also suggest private thoughts becoming impossible to contain. Some of you have spent so long protecting your peace that visibility still feels dangerous. Yet this card asks you to question whether the prison is still real, or whether only the memory remains. So the real question is not whether you are visible. You already are. The question is, who first carried your name into that room? And what exactly did they say that made everybody stop and listen? There is one detail about you that changed the entire conversation. I can feel it. But we need the next card to understand why. And the next card is the Lovers. Look at these two cats. One is resting in front, completely at ease. The other is close behind, almost wrapping itself around them. Above them, the light is bright, open, impossible to ignore. Psychologically, the Lovers is not only about romance, it is about alignment. The moment when what you feel, what you say, and what you choose all belong to the same truth. And that is the detail they noticed about you. You do not seem divided. Even when you are uncertain, there is something in you that refuses to pretend. You may question yourself privately, but you do not easily betray yourself just to make another person comfortable. That was the story told in that room. Someone described a moment when you could have performed. You could have exaggerated your importance, accepted attention you did not want, laughed at something that crossed a line, or said yes simply because the opportunity looked impressive. But you didn't. You answered calmly. Maybe you said, "That doesn't work for me." Maybe you changed the subject instead of exposing someone. Maybe you offered one honest observation, then allowed the silence to remain. No speech, no dramatic exit, no need to make sure everyone understood how strong you were. And apparently, that restraint stayed with this person. Wait. People who live around status often recognize performance immediately because they see it constantly. They know when someone is trying to be charming. They know when confidence has been rehearsed. They know when interest is really ambition wearing a pleasant face. But they could not place you inside that pattern. You were warm, but not eager. Present, but not available for anything. You listened without shrinking, and you spoke without asking the room for permission to believe you. That is what changed the conversation. The person telling the story may have said something like, they didn't even realize who was watching. And suddenly, everyone became quieter. Because beauty can attract attention. Success can create interest. Connections can open doors. But self-possession is harder to manufacture. And when it is paired with emotional depth, it becomes unforgettable. The Lovers suggests that people are not only discussing what you look like or what you have accomplished. They are trying to understand what you choose. What earns your trust? What makes you stay? What makes you walk away? And why does it seem that your approval cannot be purchased? But there is something else here. One person in that circle reacted more strongly than everyone else. They did not ask who you were. They asked a question that made it sound as though they already knew. And I do not think they admitted how much they have seen. And the next card is the Nine of Swords reversed. Look at the cat in this image. It is hanging upside down across those stacked pieces of wood, as though the pressure is still present, but no longer landing in the same way. Psychologically, this card can point to thoughts coming out of hiding, fear losing some of its control, and a person revealing more than they intended through the questions they ask. That may be what happened here. This individual did not become louder when your name was mentioned. They became quiet, very quiet. While everyone else was reacting, they were listening for details. Where did you meet? How long did the conversation last? What exactly did you say? Did you know who you were speaking to? Those are not casual questions. And notice the precision. They may have remembered your name before anyone repeated it. They may have asked to see the photograph again, returned to your work, or corrected a small detail when someone described you inaccurately. Almost as though they had encountered you before. Maybe not directly, but through a shared space, an online presence, a mutual connection, or a story they had already heard. The Nine of Swords reversed suggests that this person is accustomed to controlling what others can read on their face. They may hold influence in this circle. Not necessarily because they are the wealthiest or most visible, but because their opinion carries weight. When they become interested, other people notice. And they do not become interested easily. Wait. Their curiosity is not simply, are they attractive? It is not even, are they available? It feels closer to, are they really as self-contained as they appear? Because they recognize the difference between mystery and strategy. Some people withhold themselves to create demand. You seem to withhold access because access means something to you. That is rare in an environment where closeness can be traded, borrowed, performed, or used as proof of importance. This person senses that you cannot be purchased through attention. You cannot be impressed into trust. And you cannot be copied by someone who only studies your surface. That is why they looked again. That is why they remembered. There may have been a moment when someone made a dismissive comment about you. Something small. Perhaps they implied that the storyteller was exaggerating, or that your behavior was simply calculated, and this person corrected them. Calmly. No, that's not what it was. The room felt that, because now their interest was visible, and once it became visible, the conversation split in two. Some people leaned closer, fascinated by what they had not yet understood. But someone else became uncomfortable, not because they knew you, because they realized how quickly you had gained influence without even entering the room. And the next card is the Two of Cups. Look at these two cats. They are sitting close together, but they are not identical. Different colors, different positions, different expressions. And yet there is recognition between them. Psychologically, the Two of Cups can represent mutual understanding, not forced agreement, recognition. That matters here because the person who became uncomfortable may be used to knowing how attention moves through this circle. Who receives it? Who controls it? Who is allowed to become important? Then your name enters the room and suddenly the usual pattern stops working. So they begin asking questions. What do you really want? Why were you there? Are you trying to meet someone? Maybe they suggested that your calmness was strategic, that your distance was designed to make people curious, that the person telling the story had simply misunderstood an ordinary interaction. Nothing openly hostile, just small attempts to reduce the meaning of what happened. Because if you can be explained as ambitious, calculated, or impressed by access, then you become familiar again. Manageable. But the story did not support that version. The person speaking about you remembered another detail. Perhaps you helped someone without asking who they were. Perhaps you noticed the quietest person in the space and included them naturally. Maybe you understood something complex very quickly, then explained it without trying to embarrass anyone. Or you created something that revealed more intelligence and emotional range than people expected. Wait, the important part is that nobody had to reward you first. You were not kind because the right person was watching. You were not thoughtful because it would become a story later. You acted from the same place, whether the room understood your value or not. And that is where the attempt to dismiss you failed. The Two of Cups suggests that at least two people in this circle recognize the same thing independently. One may have been drawn to your character. Another may have recognized your talent, judgment, or ability to read a situation without becoming consumed by it. Their reasons were different. Their conclusion was the same. You would change the atmosphere. Not by demanding attention, by making certain performances feel unnecessary. Some people would become more honest around you. Others would become more aware of what they had been pretending not to see. That is why the conversation moved beyond curiosity. Your name was no longer attached only to a story. It became attached to a possibility. And I need you to hear this carefully. Someone may already have said, "We should meet them," or "They would be perfect for this." There may have been talk of an introduction, a collaboration, an invitation, or a smaller private gathering, not announced, not confirmed, but considered. And the person who first carried your name into that room did not react as though the idea was new. And the next card is the 9 of Pentacles. Look at this cat. It is surrounded by fruit, but it is not reaching for everything at once. It looks calm, comfortable, almost as though it already knows what belongs to it. Psychologically, the 9 of Pentacles can represent self-sufficiency, taste, standards. The ability to enjoy what you have built without needing anyone else to confirm its value. And that may explain why the idea of inviting you was already being discussed. This circle does not see only one possibility in you. One person may see creative value. They may believe your work, perspective, or way of communicating could bring something fresh into a space that has become predictable. Another may see leadership, not loud leadership. The kind that changes decisions because people trust your judgment. Someone else may feel a more personal curiosity, emotional, possibly romantic. They are less interested in what you could contribute to the room and more interested in what happens to them when your name is mentioned. And another person may simply recognize that you see what their environment has trained everyone else to ignore. That matters, because people inside established circles often learn the same habits. They know when to agree, when to flatter, when to laugh, when to avoid saying the one thing everyone can feel. But you are not fully conditioned by that system. So you may enter and notice what others have stopped noticing. You may ask the question nobody prepared for. You may speak to the person rather than the position. Wait. The 9 of Pentacles is not asking you to become impressed by their access. It is showing why they may be impressed by your independence from it. Some of you still carry the 8 of Swords belief that you need permission before you can belong in an important room. You imagine yourself waiting outside, trying to become qualified enough, polished enough, connected enough. But symbolically, the conversation is moving in the opposite direction. The people inside may be discussing how to make the invitation appealing to you, Who should introduce you? What kind of setting would make you comfortable? Would you accept something formal, or would a smaller gathering feel more natural? They may understand that simply offering access will not be enough. Because you are not looking for a room to rescue your identity. You already have one. And that gives you more choice than you realize. But the invitation is not the deepest part of this. The real tension is not whether you will enter that space. It is what may become visible when you do. Because the person who first carried your name into that room may not be able to hide behind the story once you are standing there. And the next card is the Three of Wands reversed. Look at this cat. It is turned inward, almost curled around itself, as though something meant to move forward has paused before crossing the distance. Psychologically, the Three of Wands reversed can represent hesitation, a future imagined privately. A person looking ahead, but not yet admitting how much of that future includes someone else. And that may be what becomes visible when you are finally standing in the same room. This person has tried to speak about you objectively, carefully, as though they are only sharing information. But their choice of details keeps exposing them. They remember the exact words you used, not the general meaning, the words. They remember the expression on your face before you answered. The moment you became quiet. The small change in your energy when something made you uncomfortable. They may defend your motives before anyone has truly questioned them. They weren't trying to do that. That's not how they are. They would never agree to something just for attention. Wait, how do they know? That may be the question someone in this circle has already asked. Because this person does not speak about you, like someone they found briefly interesting. They speak about your future as though it matters to them personally. They wonder whether you are being supported, whether the people around you recognize what you carry, whether you are choosing situations that deserve you. And even when they hide the emotion, there is loyalty in the way they describe you. Possibly longing, possibly regret, possibly the quiet awareness that they met someone important before they were ready to understand the importance. The Three of Wands reversed does not guarantee a romance or a reunion. But symbolically, it can show someone standing at the edge of a decision, aware that remaining still is also a choice. That is where the ring imagery becomes interesting. A ring can symbolize romance, yes. But it can also symbolize seriousness, selection, value. The moment when someone stops treating a connection as temporary and begins asking what commitment would require. Not necessarily a proposal. Something more basic first. Consistency, honesty, the courage to be seen wanting what they want. And this circle noticed the change in their voice before they understood the full story. They heard the care. They noticed how quickly this person protected your name. They realized that you were not simply someone being discussed. You were someone whose opinion could affect them, whose presence could change their plans. And their admiration is not the greatest surprise here. The greatest surprise is that you may already have influenced a major decision. A decision about what they will no longer accept. What they are prepared to leave behind. Or what they are finally willing to move toward. And you have not even heard about it yet. And the next card is the Ace of Pentacles. Look at this cat. It is wearing something bright and almost playful, but the expression is steady, alert, present. Psychologically, the Ace of Pentacles can represent a real beginning, not just an idea, a choice that starts becoming physical, a conversation, an offer, a change in direction, something that can no longer remain only inside the mind. And that may be the decision you have already influenced. For some of you, this person has been reconsidering a relationship or arrangement that looked stable from the outside, but felt empty in private. Meeting you, hearing about you, or watching the way you move through the world may have shown them how much they had been accepting without real connection. For others, this may involve work. a collaboration they no longer want, a role that gives them status but takes too much of their identity, a move, a public decision, or a new direction they kept postponing because the familiar option seemed safer, and for some, it is deeply personal. They may be deciding what kind of commitment they are willing to offer in the future, not only to you, to themselves. Wait, you did not create dissatisfaction inside this person. You revealed it. There is a difference. Your presence may have reminded them that peace should not require constant self-betrayal. That attraction without honesty is not enough. That success without meaning eventually becomes another kind of trap. And this is part of why your name kept returning to the conversation. Some people in that circles see your influence as inspiring. They think you helped this person become more honest, more focused, more willing to choose what actually fits. But others may be concerned, because one honest decision can disrupt an entire arrangement, a partnership, a professional plan, a social expectation, a version of the future that other people had already organized around them. The Ace of Pentacles suggests that something new is being considered in practical terms now. Who needs to be contacted? What needs to change? What would make the next step real? And suddenly, you are not only the person they admire, you are connected to the reason they began asking these questions. That brings us back to the Eight of Swords reversed. You may have believed your hidden season meant you were powerless, but your authenticity was still producing consequences beyond your sight. You were changing standards without trying to. You were showing someone what alignment looked like before they had the language to explain it. But increased visibility carries a challenge. Because when the invitation, attention, or conversation finally reaches you, the old story may return. You may question the motive, distrust the timing, or convince yourself that disappearing is safer. And soon, you may have to decide whether you trust what is opening or retreat into a prison whose door is already unlocked. And the next card is the Seven of Pentacles. Look at this cat. It is surrounded by fruit, but it is not rushing to collect anything. It is watching, assessing, waiting long enough to understand what is actually ready. Psychologically, the Seven of Pentacles can represent discernment. The pause between receiving attention and deciding what that attention deserves from you. Because this is where the old story may try to return. You may have wanted to be recognized, wanted someone to notice your work, your heart, your intelligence, or the effort it took to become who you are. But when recognition becomes real, another part of you may want to disappear. That can happen when visibility has not always felt safe. Maybe you were misunderstood when you spoke honestly, excluded when you refused to follow a group, used when you offered too much access, or judged by people who had already decided who you were before they truly listened. So now, even positive attention can create tension. You may hear about an invitation and think, I do not belong there. Someone may express serious interest, and your mind says, they will change their mind. An opportunity may appear, and suddenly you believe, I have to prove myself before I accept it. Wait. Notice what those thoughts are asking you to do. They are asking you to perform for the very attention that arrived because you were not performing. Your name reached the room before you did. Your character created the curiosity. Your restraint made the story memorable. Your perspective caused people to reconsider what they had accepted as normal. You did not audition for that. So why would you need to become someone else now? The Seven of Pentacles does not say you should trust every invitation. It says you are allowed to examine what is being offered without assuming you are the one being evaluated. You are evaluating too. Does this room respect your boundaries? Does this person's behavior match the way they have spoken about you? Is the opportunity aligned with your values or simply decorated with status? That is the real threshold, not whether they accept you. whether you can remain connected to yourself while being received. Because the task is not to become impressed by powerful people. It is to remain grounded when powerful people become impressed by you. You may need time, you may need evidence, you may need to watch what happens after the excitement settles. That is not fear, that is discernment. But do not confuse discernment with hiding. One protects your peace. The other protects the old prison. And now the final cards are beginning to show what this circle concluded about you after all the questions, the resistance, and the private discussion. Because eventually, they stopped asking whether you were important. They began asking what your presence would change. And the next card is the Two of Pentacles reversed. Look at this cat. It is upside down, holding two pieces of fruit inside an endless loop. Everything is still connected. But the balance can no longer be maintained in the old way. Psychologically, the Two of Pentacles reversed can represent the moment when something becomes too important to keep treating casually. A priority has to be chosen. A performance has to stop, and that may be the final conclusion this circle reached about you. You are not someone who can simply be added to the room like another name, another connection, or another attractive face. Your presence would rearrange things, because you carry standards without announcing them. You notice what people mean, not only what they say. You can sense when confidence is real and when it is covering insecurity. And you do not seem willing to compete for control. That gives you a quiet kind of authority, the kind people feel before they understand it. Wait, this is why your name became so memorable. Each person in that circle attached a different question to you. Who are they? Why are they not chasing access? What have they lived through that made them this calm? What would they refuse, even if the offer looked impressive? What would make them say yes? One person sees emotional intelligence. Another sees creative or intellectual substance. Someone sees leadership. And the person who first spoke about you sees something they may no longer be able to describe as casual. The Two of Pentacles reversed suggests that the conversation eventually reached a point where they could not hold every interpretation at once. So they agreed on one thing. You have weight. Not social weight borrowed from a title. Personal weight. The kind that makes people reconsider how they are presenting themselves. And now the symbols in the title begin to make sense. The champagne is celebration. The sense that meeting you, inviting you, or having you involved would mark a moment worth remembering. The fire is chemistry and momentum. Not only romantic chemistry, but the undeniable energy created when something real enters a space built around appearances. And the ring is seriousness, value, intention. The recognition that access to you should not be treated carelessly. That does not mean every person in this circle understands you correctly. Some may still project, some may idealize, some may become competitive. But they no longer believe you are insignificant. They believe you are selective. They believe you see more than you reveal. And they believe your presence would make certain truths impossible to avoid. So now we arrive at the question the Eight of Swords reversed has been asking from the beginning. Not whether you are visible, you are. Not whether your name matters, it already has. The question is this. Now that you know people can see your value before you enter the room, what will you do differently? And the final card is the King of Cups reversed. Look at this cat. It is upside down, holding a flower close, as though the feeling is present but difficult to express in a steady way. Psychologically, the King of Cups reversed can point to emotion that has not yet learned how to move into action. Care without clarity. Admiration without communication. Depth that may be real, but still needs maturity. And that is important. Because knowing that someone speaks highly of you does not mean you have to build a future around what was said in a private room. Let their actions reach you. Let consistency introduce them. Let honesty confirm what admiration began. You do not need to chase the person who carried your name into that circle. You do not need to force the invitation, search for clues, or prove that you deserve the attention. Your work is quieter than that. Receive the compliment without arguing with it. Allow the introduction without shrinking. Enter the room without assuming everyone else belongs there more than you do. And keep your boundaries. Wait. Being open does not mean becoming available to everything. You can appreciate attention and still ask questions. You can accept an opportunity and still take your time. You can feel chemistry and still require emotional responsibility. You can be welcomed somewhere without surrendering the person you were before the door opened. That is what the Eight of Swords reversed was trying to show from the beginning. The door is unlocked. But freedom does not mean running toward every possibility. It means no longer rejecting possibilities automatically, because fear speaks first. You may still hear the old voice. They will change their minds. I am not ready. I should become more impressive before they see me closely. But look at what created this interest. It was not a performance. It was your restraint, your judgment, your ability to remain yourself when approval was available. So do not abandon those qualities now that the approval has become visible. And regarding the person who has been speaking about you, their admiration may be sincere. Their feelings may be deeper than they intended anyone to notice. But private words are only the beginning. Watch what they choose publicly. Watch whether they respect your pace. Watch whether they can meet the standard they have been praising. Because the real liberation here is not becoming famous in someone else's circle. It is realizing you were never as insignificant as the old story made you feel. You were seen before you knew you were being watched. You had influence before anyone announced it. And now you get to decide what access to you means. Take what resonates, beautiful soul. And tell me in the comments, what part of yourself are you no longer willing to hide?